DNS, which is called Domain Name System. I'm sure you have heard of DNS from many different people, but what exactly it is? What's the purpose of DNS? Well, DNS is a system that is used to translate a host name to IP address. So what that means is when the whole internet started, the websites that were built, or when the systems were built, computer systems were built, every computer system has an IP address. And to remember those IP address was so cumbersome. People wouldn't remember the IP addresses. They would forget it. They would have to write it. It's a security issue. So then they came up with a resolution. And the resolution was to come up with the names, the host names. Okay, we do have the host name, but computers don't understand letters or host names. Computers only understand digits. So how do we translate it? We do need a system in place that does the translation for us. And that system or that service is called DNS. Again, Domain Name System. It translates host name to IP address to host name, which is called a PTR record. And host name to IP address, the record name is called a record. And the last function of DNS is translate host name to host name, and this is for some of the host name to translate to an easier, like an alias type of host name. For example, Google have probably like 50 of servers running background that serves their website google.com. But do you think that Google itself is the name on every server is the same name? No, it's not possible. They probably have different names on those 50 servers, but they do have one alias, Google, which is pointing to other server host names. And when it points to other servers, that is when it's called host name to host name. And in order to create that, you need to create a record, and that record is called CNAME record. Please do remember these: A record, PTR record, and CNAME record. If you're going to be preparing yourself to go for a Linux interview, you will be asked these questions. And I know that for sure. Many people have been asked these questions, so remember these records. Then there are files that are involved in the configuration of DNS, and the primary configuration file is in etc. As you already know, everyone should know that by now, that etc is the configuration directory where all the configuration of every service is located. And the file name for DNS is called named.conf. Name.conf is because named is the name of the process of the DNS. And the package that you install for DNS, it's called bind. Next file we have is var named. This is not a file, this is a directory. In this directory, you have all the zone files where you define all the hostname to IP to hostname, and all the other stuff that you want to do. The service that you need to run in your system, or when you start it, you have to run the command systemctl restart named. Named is again name, and D stands for daemon. So this daemon is going to keep running it. Every time a request comes in, it's going to serve that request. Let's log into our Linux machine and we will view some of these records. Let's clear it out. Let's see who we are. We are root, and we are in root directory. Good. So before you get into DNS, you might be asked to install or download DNS in your system and configure it. So the first thing you would do is first check whether the DNS service, or sorry, the DNS package is installed or not. So to do that, the helpful command is rpm-qa is the option, and grep it for the service, the package name, which is bind, and you run it. Anything that has bind followed by the dash and the version, it shows that yes, we do have this bind package installed. If you do not see this package in your Linux distribution, in your Linux machine, I would recommend you to run yum install bind. When you run it, it will ask you, is it okay to install the package? This is the package size and so on. And you will say yes. Since I already have that package installed, it's telling me already installed and latest version. If I had an older version, it was update that. So this is how you install the package first. Once the package is installed, then you go and configure the DNS service. And to configure that, you have to go to etcname.conf file. As I mentioned in the lesson, the configuration file is etcname.conf, and this is the configuration file where you define your forwarder setting, where you define which port is going to listen to. By the way, DNS listens to port 53. Many times people ask you this question, so just remember that. It's just something that you just have to remember. There is no logic behind it. It's just the number they have picked to do the communication. And there are other services, whether which hosts are allowed, which zone is going to be defined, what zone we're going to create. And right now there is only one zone, which is called name.ca. It means it's telling it that every time the DNS service is going to run, it's going to look into name.ca zone. And in this file, we will define the host name to IP address. So this is the first configuration file. The second one, where you actually gonna add those entries, it's located in var named. You do ls-ltr, and the file name is name.ca. It's right here, name.ca. When you hit enter, this is the file format. Anything that has semicolon means it's comment, nothing to worry about. And if you wanted to add a new hostname to IP, you will add right here. And you see here there are predefined settings that we have, and it's telling me this is the A record, and this host name right here resolves to IP address right here. You're probably going to see other records as well if we do have it. No, we don't have a default one. So if you want to create a CNAME, you'll put the host name right here, and then you will put you could skip this 36,000, I believe, and you just put in and then CNAME here, and then another host name to create the entry, the CNAME entry. That's how the configuration and the entry works. Oftentimes, people use a third-party tools to manage their DNS in the environment. But if you do not have that, you're still using you're still relying on Linux DNS. Then these are a few files you really need to keep in mind, and you will be managing these. Once you configure it, what do? You start the service. To start the service, you do systemctl restart or just start, and the name of the service is named. Once you run it, it is ran because you did not get an error message. And how do we verify it? You could just do the same command and you do status. You hit enter and it will tell you right here, this green one. This is the one you have to look for. It says it's active and it's running. Another way to find out whether the service is running or not is by running command ps-ef and then grepping it for named service. And that's where it's telling you that this is the service that is running, and this is the PID, which is a process ID that is running. And if you want to kill it, you could just type kill and followed by the process ID. Again, to wrap up, DNS is one of the important service in Linux. Many administrators will be managing that, using that. So few things that you should really need to know about DNS.